It's Ashley from Sweet Dreams Bake Shop, and welcome to Fail Friday, the series in which I tell you how to fix your baking fails, my baking fails, or how to avoid a fail. And today we're going to be talking about cake contracts. Now, even if you're just running a home baking business, having a cake contract is really, really important. Because if you don't have one, then you end up getting into some trouble sometimes. And although making cakes is very, very fun, it is still a business and there can still be repercussions from doing things the improper way. So it is important to have a cake contract. So today I'm going to be telling you what I put inside of my cake contract and some of the things that I might actually add if I ever were to start going back to selling cakes and cookies again. So let's get into it. So the first thing you're going to want to include is some sort of clause about a deposit. You always want to make sure that you take a cake deposit. Now, I've talked about why this is important for coming off as professional before, but the main reason being that in case there's some sort of rescheduling issue, in case they don't actually come to pick up the cake when they say they're going to come and pick it up, you have some recourse. So you want to make sure that you're getting paid for your time. Also, I actually think that you should be taking a deposit still that is non-refundable if they cancel last minute. So if they say, oh, sorry, we're not having the party anymore, so I'm not going to come and get the cake. Now, I don't give refunds in this instance because if you're doing it last minute, especially within a certain time period, so maybe you'll allow for a refund around, I don't know, a week, 2 weeks, but if it's like 48 hours before they're actually supposed to pick up the cake, chances are you've already got things in order, you've already gotten started on things, but you might also want to consider that you just never give a refund because what it actually means is that you are taking up that baker's time in order to get your cake made for that day. So then that means you don't know how many times that cake decorator has rejected a bunch of different orders that maybe could have made them more money or whatever during that time period. So you've actually taken that time from them and the ability to make more money because your order took up that selected spot that they had already allotted to make your cake for. So I really think that it would be fair to say that you're actually not going to refund that deposit at all, and that's why it's really important to have that in there because some people do cancel things last minute, and unfortunately part of that is accepting that, okay, I've lost the deposit for my cake. So I always made sure that I had some sort of clause in there. Now, occasionally, of course, when somebody cancels a cake, sometimes it's a bit of a relief, especially if maybe you weren't into that cake idea. So really tailor this to your own needs, but I really think it's important to have some sort of clause in there regarding deposits. Piggybacking kind of onto that whole deposit thing, I made a clause that said all cakes are final sale. This isn't Costco. You can't just return anything and everything that's been opened, half eaten, half used. No, these are custom cakes that you cannot return. Not only is it 2020, so really we can't do anything like that, but even when it isn't 2020, you can't return food items. You have no idea what happened to those food items. It's not like you're going to be able to resell them for anything. And this is also super customized. So not many people are going to want all these little random fondant details on their cake that you can just resell. And honestly, you can't resell any cakes or cookies that somebody gives back to you after they've had it in their possession. So that's why we obviously put all sales are final on this cake contract. Now, I also make sure that once we get the deposit, once we settle that all sales are final, you want to make sure that the cake is paid for prior to pickup. Now, I will say I didn't really have this clause in my contract before, but looking back, I really should have had this in the contract. That way, you're not panicking if they're not coming to pick up the cake. I mean, yes, you have their 50% deposit, but let's say you made a $600 cake and $300 isn't really going to cut it for all of the work that you did. So it's very, very important to get your cakes completely paid for before pickup. That way, you're not going to be panicking if somebody doesn't come to pick up their cake. This is when we get into a little bit of trickier territory. You want to put a bunch of different stipulations on there in terms of design. So if they give you a picture, you want to make sure that you have bullet points specifically stating which part of the pictures you're going to recreate or replicate. And you also want to put down that you will maybe make it as close as possible, but it may not necessarily look exactly like the picture. Having this clause in that alone is really, really, really going to save you. You also want to make sure that in your cake contract, you state all the different types of mediums that you will be using for each specific part of the cake. This way too, you're not going to run into any trouble. I can tell you that a lot of people run into issues when they say to a customer, yes, I can make that, but then they choose to make it out of an edible image instead of making it out of fondant like in the picture. And so those little changes can kind of make a gray area and your customer may end up upset. So if you describe each medium that you're going to be using on that cake, there really is no room for error then, because you can go back to the contract and say, well, I didn't say it was going to be exactly like the cake, and we also discussed what each medium would look like and which mediums I would use, and that is what I did. So I did really make sure to be very, very specific when it came to the design. And I honestly never really had that many issues with this. And I know that those people that have a little bit looser of a guideline start to run into problems. So you don't want to have that. You want to be able to send that cake off knowing full well that it really matched everything that you said in your contract. I've briefly talked about this before, but in keeping with the tone of the fact that it says it's not going to look exactly like the cake, let's say they're not that picky of customers and they're leaving it up to you, you need to have some sort of clause in your cake contract that says creative freedom given to cake decorator. Something like that, and then have them sign off on that. That lets you off the hook, because sometimes customers don't always know what they want, but they know what they don't want. So it's really, really important that you cover all of your bases. You also want to make sure that you put some sort of clause in there regarding pickup times. Now, if you run your own bakery storefront, like I've mentioned this before, there's probably a larger window of time that people can come and pick up their cakes because you're going to have regular store hours. But if you are a home baker, you're not really going to have regular store hours. You're probably going to base pickup times around your actual life. So I always said that there was a pickup window time 15 minutes before and 15 minutes after the agreed upon time. And if you come outside of those times, it's either an additional charge, or if you've made sure that all that cake is paid up front, that you are not going to be able to guarantee that someone is there to give them their cake. And that is the end of that. And honestly, I never really had to enforce this rule, because just giving that little clause there made sure that people were really on time. Now, this is something optional, and I've never really had an issue with this, so I never put anything regarding taste or quality into my cake contract, but you might. There have been instances that I've heard about where people complain that a cake is too dry or it doesn't taste very good. And again, I've talked about this before, how taste is so subjective. So if you know that you've had issues like this before, or if you just want to be on the safe side, you could say something like, if cake is not consumed within a 24-hour period, we cannot guarantee quality of freshness and therefore will not be able to offer any refunds regarding taste and quality, or something like that. You just want to make sure that you're covering yourself. Now, overall, all of these things, you just want to get them down in writing. That is the most important part. Now, the reason that I say that is because when you don't have these things in writing, you never know who you're going to run into. You never know who you're making your cakes or cookies. This could also apply to cookies for. So you just want to be sure that you cover all of your bases. Because if somebody does end up complaining about any one of those points, or they don't end up paying you deposit or for the full cake, you're going to end up losing out or you could get into a really tense situation where you might have to end up refunding somebody or making them something because you weren't clear enough in your cake agreement. Now, after all, I've said all that scary stuff that you need to cover yourself about, honestly, people ordering cakes are generally very, very sweet, but you never know. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you can be part of the Sweetie fam. Right now, I'm uploading daily, so make sure you hit that notification bell so you know when I upload. Also, be sure to comment, request, or ask a question. I love hearing from you guys. And make sure that you follow me on Instagram because sometimes I ask for your opinions and I need them. Bye.